Okay, it's a common practice for the IEP team to hold the meeting and then want to sign the NOREP, which is a Notice of Recommended Educational Placement is what that acronym means. For other people in the country, that is least restrictive environment, okay, LRE, placement, whatever your state calls it. So a NOREP would be the same thing. It's a Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. And just like LRE, and I'm telling you that is the same everywhere. Those things can't be discussed, determined until the very end of the meeting. Otherwise, the school system runs a huge and serious and real and substantive risk of predetermination. And we do not predetermine placement for any child, okay? And you're talking about placement with regards to classroom, how much time is inside the general education setting as opposed to outside the general education setting. And it also applies to the location of those services, not necessarily placement. There are multiple different aspects of a NOREP or an LRE consideration. It's not just a straight up, you're talking about. And this is entirely how the IEP system is set up, okay? You deal with the child profile. You talk about the child's present level of performance, their deficits, their strengths, all of those things. That goes into the student profile. Then you sit there and you look at transportation, you look at the child's behavior, you look at your child's speech and language needs, needs for assistive technology, whether they're on the AAA, how much access that they can have to the non-academic settings, the hallways, the outside of the school, extracurricular activities. You develop goals based upon good baselines or present level of performance, and then you look at how many services are needed to achieve those goals, substantively and tangibly make progress toward those goals. And at that point, once all of that is packaged together and the IEP team discusses what the child needs in order to receive a FAPE, that is when the NOREP and the LRE is discussed and determined. Where can that IEP that we just decided on and we just packaged together based upon the child's needs, and I'm talking about reliable evaluations, present level of performance, all of those things. I'm not talking about guesses and hairs on the back of your neck standing up, decisions, which goes into a lot of IEPs. And that's why it's easy for me on some of these. The IEPs are written so horribly that it's just not hard to sit there and punch holes through a bad LRE determination. It just isn't. It's not hard to sit there and punch holes into an IEP that's cut and pasted. All right? Thinking about the child takes some effort. And then packaging it together, and that's what a free and appropriate public education is for this child. And at that point, that's when the IEP team goes, well, where can this IEP be implemented? In what place? Oh, it can be done in general education, but we do need some pull-out time. Okay, well, you notate that. How much time is in general education? How much time is outside of general education in special education? And that's LRE. Now, depending on the needs of the child, and so it could be another school location because that's where they have their specialized program. But if a parent needs to get real savvy on understanding how that IEP is being developed during the meeting. That's why I think it's always good, and unfortunately, OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, when they put out their OSEP letters, I'm telling you, they're not against the school system providing a draft copy of the IEP to parents, but at the same time, they also don't encourage it. Now, that also doesn't mean it's prohibited. All OSEP is trying to do is say that it's up to the school to do that. But if the school has a prior practice of doing it, then they should continue to do it. But if they don't, then they're not mandated to do it. Now, why do I think it's important for a parent to get a copy of the draft proposed IEP in advance? Well, what is the school thinking? I think it's fine for the school to sort of present their plan, and I also think it's proper for the parent to present their plan. It saves time in a meeting, but it also helps the parent not feel like they're in a gotcha situation. Okay, because you're just dealing with a draft. And it does save time for a school to go ahead and have this stuff filled out. But please understand that once that meeting starts, any of this stuff can be changed, edited, and removed if you don't like it. And if you sit there and you are in a meeting and you go, well, you know, they're only giving us 30 minutes, that's not enough time to have a good, focused IEP meeting. Now, if they want to give you 30 minutes, then give you the draft in advance so that you have time to read and digest this stuff, so that you already have your notes coming into the meeting of what you would like changed or added to it. But if they pop you with this and you've never seen it before and they try to give you a time limit, then the school system runs a real risk of having you not have your right as a parent to a equal participatory member of your child's IEP team fulfilled. And that's a violation in and of itself. So a school has to sort of be understanding of that component. You know, but that's when dealing with stuff like this, it always happens at the end of the meeting. Now, you don't even have a copy of the current IEP or the changes that were made during the meeting, and they always want you to sign and approve it at the end of the meeting. Well, look, most states, the LRE, the NOREP is going to be the very end of your IEP. That is part of your IEP. You can't have the IEP without the LRE or the NOREP section. So it goes along with it. Now, some states may have separate paperwork sort of determining placement, but that is where that final decision is made. Now, if you're not comfortable, if you live in a state where that's going on and you're not comfortable with that, then you can always sign your name and then notate next to your name that you're signing, but you're not in agreement with the placement until you see the final copy of the IEP, because they are interconnected, they are inseparate. You cannot have the IEP and then have somehow this LRE or NOREP hanging out here. They go together. So if they're just always sort of holding this back, making you sign this over here, then you can always sign your name and then right next to it, signing that I attended, and until I receive a final copy of the IEP for review, this is contingent upon my review, an accurate review of the IEP, the IEP that we discussed and adopted. Okay.